Like I explained to you that natural resources are those resources which occur in nature, and these resources can be of two types: renewable and non-renewable. So, the renewable resources are, like I told you, the dead parts of the plants and animals, the fruit and vegetable peels, the cloth and so on. These are the renewable resources, while the non-renewable resources are like, say, metal, glass, plastic and so on. Our major concern is the non-renewable resources like metals, because we are constantly using them. In fact, even many of the renewable resources are becoming less available because of overconsumption. So, what to do? Are we helpless? No, we are not. If we change our attitude, if we change our living habits, we can still manage the resources. There is a mantra to this, and the Guru mantra is just 3 points. The first point is reduce. What do we reduce? Our consumption. We have to be particular that we must switch off lights and fans or other electric gadgets when not in use. We must reduce the usage of our vehicles. We can use public transport, or even if we are going in our personal vehicles, there can be a carpool. So, like this, you see, now the attitude sometimes is that if I can afford, then why not? Probably individuals can, but we as a generation cannot, because otherwise what we will hand over to our next generation will be a sick earth. So, reduce. Second is recycle. You see, many of the things can be recycled. Plastic can be collected, recycled, and may not be very good quality, but some kind of plastic can be made. Even paper can be recycled. So, many of the things can be recycled. However, as these substances like glass and plastic, they cannot degrade, we have to change their form with the help of heat and pressure. Now, that is another problem. If you are going to burn plastic, it is going to produce lot of harmful gases. So, recycling, though a good method, but is not foolproof. Better than recycle is also reuse. And you see, our Indian mentality or Indian economy has always been based on these three things. We as a country have never wasted. We do not believe in waste. We say that food is like God. What does that mean? That does not mean that you have to do puja. That only means this should not be wasted. We do not believe in wasting. So, whatever extra food is there, we would rather give it to some animal or to some other person if it is not spoiled, and we will not let it waste. We are very careful about our electricity bills, about our other economic pressures. So, we do not waste. So, reduction also means no waste. The judicious use, I would also like to call it judicious use. Then we certainly believe in reuse. Now the trend is reducing, but few years back, elder brother or sister's clothes would be reused by the younger ones. I still have my mother's shawls and saris which I reuse. We can even change their form. Some of the substances like, say, butter, cheese, jam or jelly that comes in bottles, what do we do with those bottles? We clean them and use them for storing. Now, that is reuse and the right way of doing. You must be getting gifts, they are beautiful wrappers. Why be in a hurry to tear it? Open it carefully and then preserve it. Maybe next time you can use it. You can make bags out of newspaper, you can make even your pencil stand out of some old can. Everything can be reused and in a very creative and beautiful fashion, and that will help us manage our natural resources. So, do not be ashamed of using old things. antique is in and it's considered very valuable. Why go to market and buy those antiques when there are things available at home? Your mothers, your grandmother, or maybe even great grandmothers, some of the things are still there and they can be very easily used. What is biodiversity? Biodiversity simply means variation in the living organisms. And where is it maximum? Certainly not in the cities. It is in the forests. So that is why the forests are also called biodiversity hotspot. Biodiversity hotspot. So when we observe a forest, we find that there are large number of organisms. So if a particular forest has X number of organisms and the other one has greater than X, so we will say which one has more diversity? The later one, right? So what is important is the number of organisms in a forest. Now if in a forest there are only lions, can we call it biodiversity? Or maybe a little more? Actual biodiversity would mean the range, the diversity or the range. In a forest typically there are microbes, there can be insects, worms, nematodes. In the ponds or whatever sources of water, there can be fishes, other aquatic organisms as well, there would be amphibians and so on. Now this is what is a range, and that is what makes it a biodiversity hotspot. The environment enthusiasts are always lamenting that there is deforestation. We are losing our forests, and that is why we are having global warming, there is less rainfall, there is scarcity of water and so on. But before we understand that why this is happening, we have to understand who have interest in forests, or in other words, who are the stakeholders. The stakeholders or the people who have vested interest in a forest are, first of all, the tribals or the locals. Now these are the people who have traditionally lived in forests. They need fuel, so they cut trees. They also need bamboo or other you can say grasses to make their huts. They also get food from there and fodder for their animals. So the locals are the main stakeholders. And many people believe that the loss or the depletion of forests have been because of them. But my dear, they have been living there for centuries. Why depletion was not there at that time? Then what happened? Then came the Britishers. Now Britishers, as you know, were the masters. They were not interested in India as a country or its welfare. They used it only as a source of raw material. So forest provided lot of raw material. So they used it. That was the beginning of industrialization. Raw material was needed and India was rich in raw material. So not only they used other raw materials, they even exploited the forests. However, after independence, our government decided to take care of this aspect. So forest department was created. So second stakeholder you can say is the forest department or the government agencies. Now once they got into the game, they started taking care. They started taking care that there was no poaching, there was no unnecessary cutting of trees. They identified which are sick trees, which trees can be cut, what percentage of trees can be cut. So they started taking care of all that. But even they made a mistake. They thought locals have no role to play, though that is not true, because traditionally These people have also taken care of forests because forests were their providers. Just as farmers worship their land, the locals or the tribals worship forests. They consider it a Devi. Anyway, the third partner is the industrialist. Why industrialist? Because it is the industrialist who needs tendu patta for making beedi. It is the industrialist who needs to wood for making furniture or other things. So, they have a stake, and any industrialist for that matter is only interested in the raw material. There is a possibility, I am saying a possibility, that these people may not think about the forest or the health of the forest. So, they cut trees, one forest is over, they will move on to the more interior area, and slowly the forests were getting removed. Of course, they were also getting removed due to urbanization, due to mining, due to industrialization, because we needed more land. So, all these factors led to deforestation, and here it is the industrialists we are talking about. Now, the fourth is the environmentalists. Now, these are the people who thought about environment, who thought that actually it is being very selfish if we are over exploiting our forests. We need to take care of forests. All these things were traditionally there in our socio-religious customs. We celebrated one Mahotsav long back, people even knew about it. One Mahotsav is not a new concept. We worship trees, we worship the forests. That does just means that we value them. You know why Salman Khan faced so much of problem when it hunted an animal in Rajasthan, or later even Nawab of Pataudi and so on? What is it? You see, there is a community in Rajasthan, the Bishnoi community. This community is very passionate about the forest and the animals. They have given it a form of their religion. You see, their history goes like this, that in 1731 there was a passionate lady, a lady who fought for her forest, and her name was Amrita Devi. This lady led a movement and about 363 people got killed only for a particular kind of tree, the khejri tree, in a Kejriwal village. For this tree, because they consider it a religious tree, they fought and laid their lives. Today the government of India has recognized it, and they have instituted a national award on the name of Amrita Devi National Award for Conservation of Wildlife. Amrita Devi National Award. For what? For conservation of wildlife. Now, this is a living example of how we can save our environment. We have to be that passionate about our environment, and only then we can save our environment. Now, this does not mean that all conventional activities have to be stopped. Now, there is a classic case of national park, Himalayan National Park. Now, what used to happen there, the people, you can say the grazers used to bring their sheep to the park, and there they would graze the grass. Now, the government stopped it, they banned it, they said no grazing. Now, what happened? The fallout was that when there was no grazing, grass grew very tall and ultimately fell down, and as a result it stopped the growth of fresh grass. For fresh grass to grow, it has to be exposed to sunlight. It has to have all the natural resources. So then everybody realized that actually some of the conventional activities have a meaning. Instead of cutting grass, the sheep were doing the work, otherwise which will require a lot of man hours and manpower. So this is another angle, that activities should not be banned like that. So here comes the importance of sustainable management. What is sustainable management or sustainable growth? We cannot stop moving ahead. The industrialization or the scientific advancement cannot stop. The development cannot stop. Then what can happen? That means we have to develop in a fashion that can be sustained on long term. It should not be over exploitation. And for this, it is important that all stakeholders are involved. We can't leave out one. Now what happened in Garhwal rainy village was that people took it upon themselves to move against the cutting of trees. They took out movement against the local contractor and they started standing against the trees, or you can say even hugging the trees to protect them, and this was called Chipko movement. This was a movement started to save their trees, and one day when men folk were not there, even the women were not left behind. They came and hugged the trees and prevented the cutting of trees. So Chipko movement has become an historical event. There is another very interesting case of Arabari forests. In the Arabari forest, in the 70s, what happened? It started becoming a sick forest. So there was a forest officer called A.K. Banerjee. Now what did he do? He used the, you can say, the ancient wisdom. What was that? He used the locals. Because whenever we want to build something new, first we must understand what are the strengths or what are the good points of the existing system. So this Mr. Banerjee did that, and he involved the locals. He said, okay, tribals, you help us in protecting our animals and plants, you guard it, and in lieu of that we will pay you. You will be able to buy food, fodder, wood, etc. at a very nominal rate. Now once the tribals' interest got involved in maintaining the forest, the scene changed. You see, it is whatever we do in an organization, when it is your organization or their organization, then 100% involvement cannot be. When can be 100% involvement? When it is our organization. The moment the locals, the government, industrialists and the environmentalists think that it is our forest, it is our environment, why only them? All of us, unless we think it is our environment, we will not be able to solve this problem. It is not anybody else's environment. These natural resources are not anybody else's, and it does not matter whether you can afford it or not. The important thing is that what are we handing over to our next generation. So this great effort of Mr. Banerjee resulted that by in 80s, yes, in 80s it was worth crores, about 12 crores, that forest's value became that much. So it's good to make something new, but it is better if we can repair, or if we can, revive whatever is already existing. You can't keep building new things. You can't create a new world all over. This world is beautiful. Let's revive it.